Welcome back to the Bucs Planet podcast. And we beat the Eagles. Okay, we should have beat the Eagles, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about beating the Eagles. It was a great game plan. I mean, Todd Bowles, if you go, I encourage you to look at Nick Sirianni, head coach of the Eagles, press conference directly after the game. And it's very interesting. He talks about these coverages and schemes that Todd Bowles has never even ran before in his whole career. He hasn't run it the whole season. He hasn't run it the whole time he's been here. And he just dials up these random exotic schemes in the playoffs. And he does it every year. He did it last year, confused the Saints, confused the hell out of the Packers. And the Chiefs just looked like, deer in headlights when we played them that time. So Todd Bowles just knows how to turn it up in the playoffs. So let's move on, okay, because we're under the Rams. And this isn't like the Eagles. This is not like the Eagles, really, at all, actually, because the Eagles. I'm sorry, it just started like pouring outside. It's kind of distracting me. Okay, won't be running at the game though, Mom, this time around though. So here we go. The Rams are a tough matchup for the Bucs. They blew them out last time. I don't care. But Will, the score was 34-24. Okay, that last touchdown was complete garbage time, and so were the field goal before that. So they got blown out. That's what it was. You can look it up. You can do chop it any way you want to. They got blown out, and they lost to the Rams 2 years ago when Brady threw that game-losing interception with a minute and a half left. Now, it's kind of funny because you think about it, the Bucs are 0-2 versus the Rams in the regular season, and now we're playing them in the divisional round. And it kind of sounds like last year when we were 0-2 versus the Saints in the regular season, and now we're playing them in the divisional round. So it's kind of a similar thing in a sense, even though it wasn't the same season, two different seasons. But it's going to be a tough matchup. I mean, I really would have rather play the Cardinals, obviously, but they got absolutely obliterated by the Rams. So let's get into it. I have a ton of notes here. I have a ton of things that need to be said. It's one of those days. It's one of those days. I mean, my notes never get longer than a page. They're way longer than a page this time, like almost two. Okay, so let's talk about the defense first. Okay, so what does the defense need to do to win this game? So last time it was kind of interesting because again, this was just like when we played the Eagles last time. We didn't really have any of our good players on the defensive backfield. I mean, we had essentially at that point when we played the Rams the first time. I don't think we really had any except Carlton Davis was our only healthy corner, but that's about it. So we're having guys like D. Delaney out there. We're having guys like Pierre Desir out there. We're having guys like Ross Cockrell out there. And it kind of forced the Bucs to play zone the entire game, soft zone. We know how I feel about soft zone. Even though they played it last time, it worked out good. It doesn't work out good against the Rams because Sean McVay is so good at scheming up against those zone coverages. And the Bucs didn't really have a choice. You couldn't play man against a Cooper Kupp, against, at the time, Deshaun Jackson, just because our corners couldn't run with them. And you certainly can't call man if we had those corners, if Odell was still on the team, or on the team at that point. He's on the team now, obviously. And so this matchup is going to be a problem. The good news is now we have our corners back. And so I think the scheme is going to be a lot different this time around. And I think it's going to be a lot because that was one of the worst defensive performances I've ever seen in my entire life. And that includes looking at a Lovie Smith coach defense for 2 years. So, keep that in mind. So how is it going to be different? So I think that now that all of our corners, they think Sean Murphy can go. Sean Murphy Bunting can go. Jamel Dean will be there. Carlton Davis will be there. So the normal cast of, the normal three. And I think that they can actually at least slightly, they're going to be able to slightly play more man than last time. It just gives them more flexibility. It opens up the playbook more because Bowles will trust the defensive backs to do the right thing. Which is another issue because last time our safeties, they were all healthy too. We had Whitehead, we had we had Edwards, and we had Winfield. They played horrible, and it was literally just because they got schemed. I mean, the fact of the matter is, there were certain times there's that play where Mike Edwards fell over and Deshaun Jackson caught the 75-yard touchdown like it was 2011, except it was a decade later, but that's another story. So Mike Edwards, he was just caught. He thought Deshaun Jackson was going to cut in on his route, so he bit in, and then Deshaun Jackson immediately pulled up field, sideline touchdown, easy. Mike Edwards is on the ground looking at the sky. And that's the kind of plays that if we do that again, if the safeties play that bad again, we will lose this game by a lot of points. This game's supposed to be close. If the safeties play like that again, it's not going to be close because our offense simply, with this many injuries, cannot hang with a defense playing that bad. It's just not. It's not going to happen. Not going to happen. An example that I thought was funny about how the scheme last time, how we were it kind of just forced our hands in general was there was a play where they scored a touchdown. You won't even believe who was on Cooper Kupp one-on-one. It was D. Delaney. Yeah, that guy. That guy was on Cooper Kupp, almost broke the receiving yards record this year. Something like that's not going to happen again. The scheme's going to be a lot different. And, obviously there's the main things. We need to get pressure. I think one big thing to note is the Rams' best tackle, Andrew Whitworth, will not be playing in this game, which means that Shaq Barrett should have a field day on whoever his backup is, or Jason Pierre-Paul. One of the two. They need to have a field day. If they don't, that's just kind of embarrassing for them. And Vita Vea, obviously they need to stop the run. They have Cam Akers back. That is unbelievable how he had a torn Achilles in training camp, yet he's back in the playoffs. I've literally never seen something like that happen before in my life. So I think having Vita Vea is going to help us a lot. Obviously in the run game, both the linebackers will be there. So from that standpoint, we should, obviously, injuries can happen in games. We got to knock on wood, but you can't really predict that. So from that standpoint, again, you have to stop the run. It's just basic stuff. You got to get pressure on Matthew Stafford. Got to get pressure with 4. We know how it goes. Now, hopefully Bowles has a couple more of those weird blitz schemes that he doesn't roll out till the playoffs. And he has a couple tricks up his sleeves for that, because I think that could confuse Matthew Stafford and hopefully end up beating them. Now, the main thing is just, can we cover? We couldn't cover last time because of the stupid soft zone that we were basically forced into playing because of all the defensive back injuries. This time it should be a lot different. So from the defensive perspective, it's kind of hard to evaluate because it really is so much of a different team then than it's going to be now. So I imagine that they're going to flip the entire script and then kind of do something completely different. Okay, so let's talk about the offense. Okay, I've got several things to say about the offense. So first of all, the injuries, right? So Rams tackle is out. Their best tackle's out. Okay, ours might be out too. Tristan Wirfs. He's still questionable. He did practice, though, today. That's big. It's Friday today. It's Friday when I'm recording this. He did practice today. Didn't practice all week, but he practiced today. Jensen was kind of on and off this week. I think Jensen's going to play. I think he'll be fine. But Wirfs, he has a high ankle sprain. Pretty much nobody plays a week later after that, but they're probably going to shoot a bunch of cortisone into his ankle, and they're going to wrap it up, and they're going to probably force him to play because, he needs to play. And he wants to play. We need him to play because if he doesn't play, the score is not going to be very close, and it's not going to be because we're winning, to say the least. Because the Rams have the number 1 pass rush in the NFL, ranked by PFF and by most of the stats, and it's mostly because of one guy, Aaron Donald. So let's talk about this person. So I can't stand Aaron Donald. I hate him, and I'm going to explain to you why. So a lot of people just kind of get away with things in the NFL. The certain, elite status NFL players, like Aaron Rodgers, for instance, right? So he lied to the media, said he was vaccinated. He broke almost every single NFL protocol rule for unvaccinated players all season and never got suspended when he then got exposed for not being vaccinated. Just a fine, a slap on the wrist. Okay, on the defensive side, it's kind of like Aaron Donald because he chokes a player pretty much every season. It happens in training camp, happens in preseason, happens in the regular season, and it happens every year. He has not been penalized a single time for it, and the refs look at him. And do you know how I know the refs look at him do it? Because he's choking a guy like this, and the ref grabs him to push him off, clearly showing that he knows what's happening. No flag. And then not only is there no flag, there's not even a fine. The NFL doesn't just look at it and say, oh, he's attempting to basically murder a player on national TV, and we're just going to go ahead and not fine that. But, when Bruce Arians taps Andrew Adams on the helmet, it's a $50,000 fine, which don't even get me started on that crap. Okay, you did. You already got me started on it. I have in my notes not to talk about it. I'm going to talk about it. So Bruce Arians was trying to get Andrew Adams not to taunt, okay? And so he just kind of slaps him on the head. And, of course, the mainstream media, all the accounts like, oh, Bruce Arians hits a player, hits, like implying like, took off his helmet and clocked him in the face, which, first of all, I mean, Bruce Arians is 69 or 70 years old. So, I mean, I don't think even if he did that, it would really do anything. But he slapped him to stop committing the taunting penalty because it's right in front of Bruce Arians. In case you don't know what happened, Shaq Barrett gets the interception. Andrew Adams is now staring down one of the Eagles players, and he's talking trash to him, and it's right in front of Bruce Arians. It's not like he had to run out on the field to do it. It's right in front of him, and the ref's there too. He slaps on the head. Hey, stop talking. Get back to the sideline. We don't want a penalty. That was it. And that's a $50,000 fine, but Aaron Rodgers breaks every single COVID vaccine rule and no fine, and then Aaron Donald shows the players every single year, no flag, no fine. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. We know how it goes in the NFL. And then... Do I say? And then Antonio Brown. I have a separate note part in my notes, which I might show it to you. I have a separate part in my notes say don't talk about Antonio Brown in relation to this. Antonio Brown has to run his mouth again. So he talks about how he was, his song "Pit Not the Palace." Okay, so he tagged Bruce Arians getting fined, and he said "Pit Not the Palace." Okay, and clearly implying that he thinks he's right, he thinks he's arrived, he thinks he's anything. Okay, and then there was a report last week that said, which I guess Antonio Brown said on some show, that he was, he wish he handled the situation differently, wish he didn't walk off on the field like that, which I'm sure, obviously. But then he completely walks back that entire take when he goes on Brandon Marshall's podcast this past week and said that, oh, well, everybody handles situations differently, and that's how I handled that one. So he clearly has no remorse, don't care about him at all. Probably shouldn't have brought him up again because it's just bad. He doesn't need publicity. And by the way, again, I go on Instagram, and it's just so funny. People keep wanting to blame all these things, and it's you guys' fault because I go on Instagram, I go to the comments again, and after Bruce Arians gets fined, guess what all the comments say on every NFL page on Instagram? AB was right. I told you, yeah, AB was always right. He was right in Pittsburgh. He was right in Oakland. He was right in Buffalo. He was right in Tampa. He's always right. And then, you're just enabling him, and I just don't even feel bad. I really don't. Because, I'm done. Okay, my take on Antonio Brown, I have an entire video on Antonio Brown. Okay, my take is done on him. Okay, next. So Aaron Donald gives the Bucs a massive, massive issue. On top of the fact that he could literally murder one of our players by choking them to death, and then he wouldn't receive a single fine. But on top of that fact, he's obviously very good at the sport. And without a healthy Ryan Jensen, because he's going to play. Jensen's going to play, but he might not be the healthiest. And especially if they line him up, because they do this sometimes. Sometimes they put him at defensive end. Put him on the right tackle with no Wirfs. You're going to put him on probably Josh Wells, who has a torn quad. He might not even play, so it's going to be our third string tackle. That is not a matchup that I would like to see. In fact, that's a losing matchup, pretty much a guaranteed loss, if that's a thing. Which there's a probably 70% chance it will be a thing. So does that mean we have a 70% chance of losing? I'll let you know on Sunday after the game, like I always do. So... And then, they added Von Miller. They have Robert Quinn. They have these, Leonard Floyd, right? Do they have Robert Quinn? I'm not sure. I might have messed that one up. But they have the other three guys, and it's a very good pass rush, best pass rush in the league. It's going to be super hard for this offensive line, this banged up, to stop them. All right. So what's the other thing? Oh, okay. Here's another rant. All right. So the Bucs last time had 6.3 yards per play when the last time they played the Rams in the regular season. But yet the Bucs got blown out, but they had 6.3 yards per play, and it was one of the highest in the NFL. Like that's in a week in, week out basis, that's probably top 5, top 8 yards per play for your offense in a game. And yet the Bucs got blown out and the offense looked atrocious. And do you know what's funny about this? I have to talk about this. It's actually in my notes to talk about this, okay? This is not me going on another just unscripted rant. This is at least a scripted rant, okay? There's a difference. There's unscripted rants, and then there's scripted rants, okay? This is a scripted rant, and here we go. So I want to talk about analytics for a second in football, and it's funny because last semester, hopefully you guys are watching this. If you were in that one class last semester, I talked about it with these guys all the time that I can't stand analytics in football. I think it's stupid. It's a waste of time, and it's funny because I'm in a business analytics class right now, and I'm just sitting there. I'm like, look, analytics is good. Analytics is fine. It's horrendous in football, and it's borderline ruining the game, and I'll tell you why. So it all started when they started showing that probability of winning, probability of losing, when they just flashed that on the screen when you're watching an NBC game. Let's say a team's down by 7 with like a minute left. It says probability of this team winning, 10%. And it just started annoying me. It's not like baseball, okay? It's completely different because analytics has pretty much taken over baseball completely, and it's good. Analytics is fantastic in baseball, because the entire sport can pretty much be run by analytics, especially teams with low salary caps, right? We've all seen Moneyball, okay? And then ever since Moneyball came out, now it's like kind of just infected all these other sports like football, where you need it kind of. It's kind of fun to look at, but it's so stupid from any other. If you're actually like game planning off of analytics, you're an idiot, and I'll tell you why. There's two teams in the NFL. Two teams in the NFL. This made me so happy. I talked about this with all these people that I would argue with about analytics and football. There's two teams in the NFL that openly talk about how much they use analytics, how they only go by analytics, how they, or when I say only, for the most part, only go by analytics, and they game plan with analytics. It's the Los Angeles Chargers and the Baltimore Ravens. They always talk about it. And, what were they doing? They were on the couch while the teams that don't use analytics are in the playoffs because analytics are stupid. And do you know what's the funniest part about the Ravens and the Chargers, and especially the Chargers? They are two of the most talented teams in the NFL, and they're not even in the playoffs. The Steelers got in the playoffs over them. The Raiders got in the playoffs over them. Do you know why? Because those teams didn't use analytics. The teams that have all this talent and they use analytics. You can ask John Harbaugh about all those 2-point conversions. But Will, the analytics say that if you could just do the 2-point conversion now versus you could kick it off in overtime, the other team can get it, and then the probability of them scoring divided by the square root of it. Okay. What is that supposed to mean to me? It's a bunch of crap, because they go for 2 when they instead of tying the game instead of going to overtime because the analytics say so. Okay, well, guess what you're doing? You see that couch right there? That's what you're sitting on. While other teams are playing because we don't use analytics, especially the Bucs. I think analytics in football is good for one thing, and it's for medical reasons, when you can record how many times a player is getting hit, toward how fast they're running, all that kind of stuff like that can help for medical reasons. I think that's fantastic. It's a great thing. In terms of just like the game, the sport, in terms of scheming, it's so stupid, and it's going to be really funny when all these teams that, it's and even the Cowboys, Mike McCarthy said he likes to use analytics, and, they're the 3 seed playing the 6 seed, and they got beat pretty bad. If Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't throw that pick at the end, that kind of let them back in the game, they would have gotten blown out. So, I mean, it's almost like 3 for 3 on the analytics teams and how bad they were. Even though the Cowboys really aren't an analytics team, it's really the Chargers and Ravens, 2 of the most talented teams in the league, but yet can't make the playoffs because they use analytics, whatever. All right, so I'm done with that. I just wanted to make the point that the Bucs, from an analytics standpoint, looked like we blew out the Rams because we beat them in every one of those yards per play, points per drive, all these like weird stats that essentially mean nothing because you just got beat and blown out. So I just wanted to say that. I want to make that clear. I hope the people that I argued with about this all last semester are listening and knowing that, as usual, I was right. Analytics are stupid in football. Okay, so one of the other issues with this game last time was that not only was the pass rush destroying us with a fully healthy offensive line, normally how you kind of counter a good pass rush is you can do play action because it gives your offensive line more time to block. It's not just for everyone biting on the run. It's that the defensive line has to anchor and protect against the run just in case. And once they realize it's a pass, then they can rush. It's like an extra just second, half a second to a second for your offensive line. And it just wasn't working. It worked like once, but we kept running it. But since we really didn't have a threat of a run game, which was, by the way, atrocious. I mean, Ronald Jones had 2.2 yards per carry. Leonard Fournette had 2 yards per carry, and we ran the ball a total of 9 times. So none of that was good. So we need to make sure that the play action works better, because if we can't run the ball and then you can't run play action, then to be honest, we can't really do anything, because then we're just going to be doing regular drop back passes every play. And, last time Brady threw the ball 55 times, which is kind of insane at age 44, obviously. I mean, that was even a lot for Jameis last year. And I mean, we always ran these weird, we always had these games where Jameis would throw like 45, 50 times, but 55 is like aggressive, like aggressively aggressive. So the Rams defensively pretty much only run zone. Like that's their thing. They run zone. And that's why it's kind of hard because a lot of people they're like, oh, Ramsey on Devontae Adams, Ramsey on DeAndre. It's kind of hard to grade them because they only run zones. It's like, okay, like DeAndre Hopkins' stats might be 10 receptions, 300 yards, 8 touchdowns, but then on the 10 snaps he played with Ramsey, it was like 1 catch for 5 yards. But then it's also kind of unfair because it's like, well, there was only 10 times versus the other 30 times that he was. I don't know. It's kind of dumb. Anyways, the Rams only run zone. And that's just their scheme. And by the way, Raheem Morris is their defensive coordinator, who we all know I can't stand, and you guys can't stand him either. Okay, he's another one of those ex-Buccaneer coaches that now a defensive coordinator is coming back, right? Raheem Morris was the interim coach for the Falcons last year. We destroyed that team both times, and that made me very, very, very happy. And ironically, Dirk Cutter was his offensive coordinator too. It was like a whole Bucs coaching staff loser reunion, which none of us wanted to see. And it's going to happen again because Raheem Morris is back in town yet again. All we need is Aqib Talib to come too, and then they can go party together and have like 10 losing seasons in a row like they did with us. Thank you. So the reason they run zone is mostly just because of how good their pass rush is. They can just kind of sit back there. They force, especially with the Bucs. I mean, it's the message I really have for the Bucs is it's coming again, right? I told you last week that the Eagles were only going to run zone. Every team just pretty much only runs zone against us now. It's the Kansas City treatment. And to prevent those big plays. And even though we don't have our receiving core is not as good as it used to be because no Goblin, no AB, right? But we still have Evans, still have Gronk, still have the depth at tight end, right? Bigfoot, OJ Howard, and Cameron Brate. And then we'll see if Cyril Grayson plays. Brashad Perryman's obviously fast, but Tyler Johnson, sometimes Scotty Miller. But the thing is it's like, well, how do you beat it, right? So they're only going to call zone, and they call a very, very conservative zone for them. They did it last time at least. We'll see how they play it this time, but assuming they'll do kind of the same thing they did last time, which I don't see why they won it because they blew us out last time, according to analytics. I'm just like, shut up. And the way to beat it is just it's going to be one of those games where Brady's going to have those slow, methodical drives down the field. It's not going to be a ton of big plays. Obviously, in a football game, there's going to be big plays, at least a few on each side. And, so that's going to be a thing. But it's going to be a lot of just consistently 3 yards, 4 yards, 6 yards, 8 yards, 4 yards, 9 yards. It's going to be one of those. And the thing is it's going to work. It's going to work, but there is no room for error. There is zero room for error. If you get sacked, ball gets tipped, a drop, one of those ones where Brady's anticipating the throw and our receivers are just randomly stopping on routes like Tyler Johnson did the whole last game. Troy Aikman was so funny on that. I went back and watched the broadcast of that game, and Troy Aikman was wailing on Tyler Johnson for just stopping randomly on some of these routes that he shouldn't have. It was really funny. And it kind of makes Brady look inaccurate. So there's going to be a lot of that. And we need to essentially just execute perfectly on offense. But Brady's done this so many times. I mean, how many times is this like the game plan? He just dinks and dunks and dinks and dunks and dinks and dunks. Touchdown, 8-minute drive, 13 play. And that's what I think it's going to be. I really think that's what it's going to be. We're going to get Fournette back, I'm pretty sure. And so that's going to help a lot. Giovanni Bernard's back. I'm not sure if Rojo's going to be back. I think he is, though. But I mean, his hands are questionable anyways. And another big thing is I think it's going to be a huge tight end day because with zone, your best target in zone, generally speaking, is your tight end because they kind of split the zones. You're on a linebacker. They usually don't run as deep. So you're kind of you're essentially running into zones where guys aren't great at running them or covering them like linebackers instead of wide receivers that are running zones with corners and safeties. Tight ends are kind of just doing it with linebackers and maybe a nickel corner. And especially with Gronk and his size, it's such a mismatch. It's good anyways, and Brady and Gronk, that connection is just absolutely absurd. So I think Gronk's going to have a big day. I think all the tight ends, honestly, even OJ, even Bigfoot, he's going to have a big day too. And that's pretty much going to do it. Oh, the zones. Or the screens. So the Bucs like to call a lot of wide receiver screens. We know this. We ran a lot to AB. We ran a lot with Chris Godwin, sometimes to Evans, and Jalen Jordan every now and then, which should never happen again for the rest of our lives. Now, this works also against zone, especially with the soft zone the Rams play. But again, the Rams, especially with Jalen Ramsey, he reads it so well that wide receivers can't block that fast if they read it perfectly. So I think the better idea would be to run these screens a lot, but then have actual offensive linemen and not just wide receivers blocking. And a good example of this, you guys remember the Rams game right before halftime. It was 3rd and 25, I believe. And Brady threw a screen to Giovanni Bernard. It was supposed to just get 5 yards. We punt the ball at halftime. We threw the screen to Giovanni Bernard. He gets 30 yards on the play, 30 yards on the screen. And because the Rams were doing soft zone, and we got offensive linemen involved blocking these DBs back to, out of the stadium, like in the blind side. And that's kind of how we got a lot of big plays, or that one big play in that incident. And I believe that we're going to need to have to do it again. And so I think that with the screens incorporating offensive linemen, more so than wide receivers, tight ends being a big factor, dinking and dunking down the field, but efficiently, decent. We just need a decent play action game, just not a horrendous one like last time. That's how you can win this game. And then for the defense to not just absolutely implode like they did last time, and I'm just going to completely rely on Todd Bowles not to do the same thing again. I'm just going to rely on it. I just think he won't, and we have better DBs this to go around. So that is how I believe the Bucs can win this game. It's going to be very close. It's going to be absolutely insane. Obviously, go Bucs, but I don't know. I don't know about this one, but I don't really know about any playoff game except for last weekend. I pretty much knew the Bucs were going to beat the Eagles, but I didn't want to say that obviously because that's not good looks. But so that's pretty much going to do it for this episode. Hopefully we'll be making an episode next week that's not going to just be me being depressed and sad. Also noteworthy, this could be Tom Brady's last ever game. So, all right, I'll see you. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, so there's rumors that this could be Tom Brady's last ever game, and because he might retire this year. I don't know if it's true or not, but I'm just going to enjoy it while we have him, and I'll deal with it later. That's like one of those issues like, okay, we'll deal with that later. Let's just focus on this game. But just to keep in mind, maybe appreciate it a little bit more than maybe we have been, right? Just side note. All right, so with that, this is it, right? I'll see you guys. The next time I see you guys, it's gonna be we're all gonna know what happened. So I don't know if you can tell, but I'm kind of nervous. I'm even kind of doing this. I'm just thinking about the game. I'm oh my gosh. All right, so I will see you guys next time, and go freaking Bucs.